Well, good morning everyone, and I'm very happy to be here in Poland for the first time in my life. You know, the amount of travelling I've done over the last 25 years, it's like, wow, a new airport. I can add it to the list. I don't have a list tomorrow. Anyway, when Dorota invited me to talk at this conference, and listening to her introduction, I decided that I should explain kinesiology as I see it, as a stress management system. And this goes right back to Richard Utt, who's the founder of applied physiology and one of the major influences in my kinesiology direction, where he saw kinesiology as a stress management system. And I don't know how many of you have a knowledge of physiology. And there's a term called homeostasis. I don't know if you've heard of it. And that's kind of where the body likes to sit. Homeostasis is this kind of equilibrium state. But he coined this term called homeostatic stress, which is basically what he meant by that was the body finds an equilibrium in a stress state. Anyway, he had his basic training. And once you completed it, he gave you the title of Stress Observation Specialist, which is SOS. You know, SOS? Yeah. He used to have all these funny terms, you know, like this. Anyway, so I'm just continuing on that tradition. Of course, he trained Charles Krebs, and Charles trained me. And I went to visit Charles. He's back in Australia now. I saw him in July. He's retired now, and he's doing okay. Okay, so on with my talk. So some of the topics I'll be looking at is, first of all, the triune brain, muscle testing, the NK triangle. You know, every school of kinesiology has their own triangles. So once I developed mine, I thought, wow, now I can have a school. Well, you know. And we'll be looking at energetic anatomy, chi, 5 elements, meridians and emotions. And I've added a little surprise at the end. Hopefully we've got time for it. It's some new stuff I've just come up with recently, the latest thing involving chakras. She understands it with Indian mix, that's cool. Okay, so first, triune brain. This was developed by Paul MacLean back in the 50s, last century. That was 70 years ago. And basically he said, you know, studying evolutionary model of the brain, he identified 3 levels of it. You have the reptilian brain. So that's the ones that reptiles have. That's like reflexes, instinct to survive, you know. Then you have the paleo-mammalian brain. And that is what you get it first emerged in the first mammals. And that has the limbic system. And the limbic system is where you have your emotional brain, you have memory,
pamięć,
and skill learning, you know, like when you learn a skill, like driving a car. No one here was born knowing how to drive a car, you had to learn. And then you have the neo-mammalian brain, or the neocortex, and that is your thinking brain. It's what humans have that is more than any other mammal. And I describe it as our greatest gift and our greatest enemy. Because when you get some thoughts in your brain, you can keep recycling them and triggering your lower brains, and you can stay in a constant state of stress. And so these relate to the different levels of consciousness. And so you have the reptilian brain is the unconscious brain. So when you look at the stressors, it's like you don't know you're stressed. Like, have you ever seen anyone and they say, oh, I'm not stressed out, I'm perfectly fine. Yeah, that's that. Reptilian brain. And of course you don't know why you're stressed out. Then you've got the subconscious stressors. So they're in your limbic brain. Okay, I know I'm stressed out, but I don't know why.
Dlaczego?
I don't know what my trigger is. And then you've got the conscious stressors, and that is in your neo-mammalian brain or neocortex. And that is, you know you're stressed out, and you know why. And that is powerful. You know, in NK we have this tagline, make the unknown known. And that comes from my teacher. She wasn't kinesiology. She was a Reiki teacher, but she was a master, completely enlightened person. And she used to say, the power is making the unknown known. And it's so true. And once you know what's stressing you out, you can actually start addressing it. And a lot of people do lots of psychotherapy and things like this just to figure that out. So why am I talking about this? Because I want to explain to you how I see kinesiology works. So how many people here have ever received a kinesiology session? How many people have done a kinesiology session? Okay. What's the first thing you notice that you use is muscle testing, right? You know, kinesiology can get a bad name because people use it as a diagnostic tool. In fact, on the International College of Applied Kinesiology website, they say kinesiology is a diagnostic tool, which I don't agree with. It gets us on quack watch, you know, where people think we're quacks because we use muscle testing. Quack, quack. Oh, sorry.
Oszołomami.
It's a dodgy doctor. It's called a quack. You know, quackery is like when those snake oil salesmen, oh, I've got an elixir that'll fix you. Okay, but I'm going to explain to you and give you a physiological model of exactly how it works and why it is powerful. So here we have, up the top there, you have, you know, cortex, stressor identification. That's a conscious stressor. You have the amygdala, which is in the limbic brain. That's a subconscious stressor, but the amygdala evaluates the stressor. So as sensory information comes into your nervous system, what happens is the amygdala samples it, and it kind of makes a decision, is this worthy of a stress response or not? And I'm talking about fight-flight. And so if there is if it says yes, then you, it'll decide whether you, what kind of stress response. Will you be scared? Will you get angry? I'm Latino, I get angry normally. And then it goes down to the brainstem. And so the brainstem actually organises the response in your body. Like, if I was angry, and believe me, you do not want to see me when I'm angry. I'm my father's son. Unfortunately, my son is his father's son too. He's learning how to navigate that. He's only 25, he's living in Stockholm now, but, you know, that's where he's going. But he's got the same thing. And hope he never sees this, he'll hate it. But how do you know if I'm angry? Natalia, you really upset me. I'm so angry.
Jestem zły.
Oh, you look at all of you. I'm so angry. Do you believe me?
Wierzycie mi?
Now, most people laugh because what I'm saying and how I'm saying it is not matching.
Tego.
But if I go, you know, like this, then you go, oh. Or you go, or, you know, when it was my father and I, we used to just fight like, you know, you better get out of the room. But anyway, so that response where you're like this, that is organised in the brainstem. And for all you pancep aficionados, it's the PAG. Okay, and so you get two things. You get a sympathetic nervous system response, which includes, you know, could be dilation of arteries, constriction of arteries, release of adrenaline from the adrenals, things like this. But also it goes into the reticular formation, and the reticular formation is one of the ways you control your muscles. And therefore, the muscle test is not a balanced muscle test. Yeah, I've written there muscle tests weak or strong, but there are other possibilities. But still, what it does, it is just showing you, all the muscle tests can tell you that there is stress in the system and what level of stress in the system you have. And then, so that's how it works. A muscle testing is a physiological response. It's a neurological event, and it's not no miracle. You've just got to know how to ask the body. Where's those T-shirts? That was a word from the sponsors, by the way. No, kidding. So, over here I've added a couple of things there. That's with the cerebellum and unconscious proprioception. That's my model of how pause locking works for those of you who know kinesiology. If you don't, if you see your kinesiologist doing this dance, that's what they're using that to keep the stress in the system, to keep the muscle test indicating so you can perform the kinesiology balance and maintain the information so you can balance it. Okay, so movement in the triune brain. That was fun that Dorota did I got caught on the hookup, so yeah, it's like, okay, I need some integration. It's probably the jet lag, I'm still a bit, So the reptilian brain does reflexes, and it is involved with the cerebellum and reticular formation, which I just, oops, wrong way. Ooh. Going the wrong way. Okay. It's just a preview of what's coming up. Oh, here we go. I worked it out before, the jet lag. So you see reticular formation. And so the cerebellum and reticular formation mediate the reflexes. And when you have the primitive reflexes, you may have heard of the primitive reflexes. That's just a definition. It's a reflex that should be present at birth. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Then you've got skills, sometimes called implicit memory, instead of explicit memory. Explicit memory is something you can say, it's verbal. Where implicit memory, you can't say it. And there's two forms of that. It's something you can do, so that's a skill. So, like driving a car. Or pause locking. How many kinesiologists here had trouble learning pause lock? If someone's having problems with that, you need to balance their basal ganglia. That's what you need to do. And it's emotional memory as well, or conditioned memory, Pavlovian conditioning. You've all heard of Pavlov's dog, right? If you haven't, just look it up. But again, they both use a reticular formation, as well as the PAG, which uses the reticular formation for the response to the body response to stress. Okay. Then you've got the neocortex. So that's conscious movement. Like I'm going to go here. Oh, which is mine? We've mixed our water bottles up.
That's yours.
That's yours. I'll put the lid on. So I want to pick up my water. That's a conscious thing I'm wanting to do. Okay, so that is in your, it takes planning and stuff like this. And your brain actually has to, when I walk over here to pick it up, my brain has to plan the contraction and relaxation of a whole host of muscles for me to do that. So that's a neocortical function. Okay. So the pyramidal motor system, that's your neocortex. Down in your spinal cord, you have what's called motor neurons, or sometimes they call them lower motor neurons. And the lower motor neurons are down in the spinal cord, and they directly synapse with the muscle. So they contract the muscle. And the upper motor neuron is in the cortex, Brodmann's area 4 for those. And that synapses directly with the lower motor neuron. So from your cortex to your muscle, there's just one synapse. The reticular formation, on the other hand, has 3 divisions. We're interested in the orange division there, the middle one. So that, you can see there, if you can understand the picture, it goes down and synapses from the reticular formation goes down to the lower motor neurons. So when you have no stress, so the PAG's not activating your lower motor neurons through the reticular formation, what you have is the muscle test will just be good. And this is a nice picture of the information in the muscle. So the blue, is it blue or purple? Well, bluey purple. It's, that is your motor neurons synapsing directly with the muscle. And then you have the green one, that's the spindle cell. So basically what that has to do is it measures the level of contraction of the muscle. And so when those of you who do kinesiology, what you do is you learn how to spindle a muscle on and off. And if you can do that a number of times, don't just do it once, do it 4 or 5 times to make sure. If you can do that, then the muscle is good. No stress. But if you can't, then Houston, we have a problem. Okay, sorry, no, Warsaw, we have a problem. And so this is how it works. You've got your lower motor neurons down there, your striated muscle, and it's called that because when they look under the microscope, it's got stripes. And you've got, you know, your Brodmann's area 4 neocortex, which I showed you, and then your reticular formation. You've got your basal ganglia, cerebellum, and PAG. So this is how muscle testing works. We've got the higher brain stressor identification. That means you're actually aware of your stressor. Remember I said before, you know why you are stressed. Yep. The unknown is known. Then you've got the limbic brain, and the limbic brain is where you have your memories and emotions. So that is your subconscious stressors. So you know you're stressed, but you don't know why. Then the brain stem, it organises the response in the body. I mean, the limbic brain also makes the decision how you're going to respond to the stressor too. And one thing that's important to understand about stressors, in psychology there's this term called perceived stress. Because what is really stressful for one person, for another person might be just, whatever. They don't react. No reaction. I remember when I was living in the ashram in India, I was taught this spiritual practice was called watching your reactions. And it was quite powerful, actually. So when you react, you watch it. Try to observe it. Pity I never kept on with it. Pity I never kept going with it. No. Otherwise, I'd probably be sitting in a cave in the Himalayas, you know. Okay. So then that goes down to the spinal cord, and then you get the muscle test response. So the muscles, what the function of a muscle is contraction. So a muscle will move the body. It'll move. It'll be an extension, which means it stretches out, and so all the muscle can do is contract its fibres, and that causes movement. So you move in the direction of contraction. So when we do the standard muscle test, we test the muscle from contraction to extension. So a common one is the deltoid muscle, which is like you test like this. So up here the deltoid's contracted, and so when you test it down there, you're testing it into its extended state. One of the geniuses of Richard Art, what he did is he tested the muscle, not just there, he tested it there, and then there, in 14 different positions, because he likes holograms, so 14 position muscle monitoring. And then there was this guy from England called Alan Sales. He came up with this genius thing, it's like incredible, where he came up with a way of testing the muscle while you were moving it. That was clever. He was an interesting guy. He's passed on now, but interesting guy.